top stories. Get the news before it's history in the morning.
To all these sports lovers, we might have not spoken about this much because we've been watching it a hell of a lot, I can tell you that much. And I know a lot of South Africans have been keeping an eye on the Commonwealth Games. But the curtain has certainly fallen on the 2026 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Team South Africa, I mean, they returned back home with heads held firmly high. That campaign packed with golden moments. And I mean that literally. I mean, there was history-making performances, stories of resilience that inspired an entire nation. I look at the brilliance of somebody like Sinisi Potambile, storming to gold in the men's 200 meters. There was also the great old Chad le Clos, writing yet another chapter in sporting history as the most decorated Commonwealth Games athlete of all time. With an astonishing 21 medals, the green and gold, we can all say flew proudly across Scotland. And to break all that down, we're going to bring somebody who knows all about what I'm talking about. And you got to add to that the breakthrough performances that were hard and podium finishes, unforgettable displays of determination. And also there's no doubt, though, that Team South Africa has left a lasting mark on these games. But what do these performances say, though, about the future of South African sport? I mean, who are the biggest stars? If you're watching, please let me know which moments will define Glasgow 2026 and where can Team South Africa improve ahead of the next major international events. Well, to unpack it all, I'm joined by sports reporter from The Citizen, Wesley Botton. Wesley, thank you so much for your time. Long time no speak. Good evening and welcome to the show. Hope you can hear me loud and clear, Wes. Good evening.
I can. Can you hear me, Rob?
Yeah, there you are. I thought you were trying to disappear like some of these other nations trying to steal our gold medals, eh? What do you make overall of what happened with Team South Africa with the 2026 Commonwealth Games, Wes?
Man, I always want to just shout and rah, and South Africa's doing so well. But honestly, Robert, I think there's a lot of positives that we can take, specifically the swimming team. The swimming team were absolutely incredible. They got 22 medals. They've got more medals than they've ever had at the Commonwealth Games. So that's obviously, I think the highlight that comes out of everything, led by Peter Coetzee, who got 6 medals, backstroke specialist. Looking ahead to the next Olympics, I think he's our guy. But I think there's a lot of questions that are being asked about other sports. And it was a weird Commonwealth Games because of monetary issues. They didn't have a lot of the sports that they normally have. So it's kind of difficult to gauge things. But just in terms of, the next biggest sports at the Olympics, athletics, I feel like we fell quite far short. So good things, bad things, but maybe gives us an indication of what we need to work on, just building up to the next Olympics. Let's
start with the good news, though. You talk about swimming very glowingly, and that's always been, I mean, whether it's the days of Penny Haynes or even Chad le Clos, the fact that we herald him now in 2026 is something for South Africans to be proud of. Maybe let's start with a man who doesn't want to be old, and Chad le Clos. He keeps himself in peak form, is always very disciplined as an athlete. What do you make of his performances, and what does that signify, though, to South African swimmers overall?
I can't say enough good things about Chad le Clos. If we look back to the 2012 Olympics where he beat Michael Phelps, I thought that, and I think a lot of people did, that le Clos was going to become an absolute phenom in sport. He really looked like he was the next big thing in South African sports. And I think even Chad would agree that he probably hasn't achieved as much as maybe we expected from him. But, I mean, he made his Commonwealth Games debut back in 2010. I mean, that was 16 years ago. And the guy's still competing. He's still picking up medals. And considering the form that he's in, even looking ahead again to the next Olympics, he could be a key member of the relay teams. So just in terms of longevity, I mean, how do you get any better than that? How do you, especially as a swimmer, right? Swimmers don't last very long. They kind of come through as teenagers, and by their mid-20s, they've peaked. When you're in your mid-30s and you're still going strong and you're still competitive and you're still one of the key members of the national team, regardless of what he's done or maybe what we thought that or what we hoped he was going to do that he hasn't done, that's kind of irrelevant. To become the most decorated athlete in any sport in the history of the Commonwealth Games. Just that alone, I think, just shows what an incredible athlete Chad le Clos.
I mean, I watched that as he came out the water. There was almost an admiration from the other swimmers who looked at him almost like, fanboying him and saying, here's one of the greatest, and we're swimming against him. He might not have come first, but there's just a global recognition here, Wes, of who and what he's all about.
Yeah, for sure. And like I'm saying, we couldn't have, you can't ask more for an athlete to, especially, when you listen to Chad after he's raced in South African kit, he really loves this country so much, and he appreciates where he is, and he always has. He's always had this emotional sort of aura about him, and he when he got his record medal at the Commonwealth Games, he went on to get one more, but when he became the most decorated male athlete at the Games in Glasgow, he wasn't even in the pool. So he swam in the heats and then wasn't there for the final, which meant that he didn't get to stand on the podium. But if you speak to the other athletes who were swimming in that final, and if you speak to Chad himself, it's very clear that they made it about him. We appreciate him so much. And I think South African swimming has to, and not just South African swimming, right? South African sport, we've got to look back on this guy's career, and we've got to appreciate the things that he's done for South Africa, to compete in 5 Commonwealth Games and get medals at every single edition of them, to compete in multiple editions of the Olympic Games and get 4 medals, to compete in however many editions of the World Swimming Championships and to get medals. You don't see this, especially in swimming. And I think South Africa's heart has to go out to Chad le Clos. We have to appreciate the man for what he's done.
Yeah, especially with all the struggles that he has publicly spoken about. It's difficult from a mental perspective, again, whereas to rise from that and be as great as he's been. But let's not take it away from a guy like Pieter Coetzee. Winning 3 individual gold medals in the backstroke, 2 in the relay, that is something of championship winning mentality. I don't know, what's your take and what's the future here?
So I think he is our future, right? So if we're looking ahead to the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, I think Pieter Coetzee is the guy that we have to look for. We have other athletes in different sports who will be challenging for medals, no doubt, but he's our guy. Looking ahead to 2028, Pieter Coetzee, and it's hard to gauge with the Commonwealth Games. You're missing a lot of countries that are going to be at the Olympics. You're missing the United States. You're missing Russia. You're missing China. So we have to take that into account. But he dominated all 3 of those backstroke finals in Glasgow. And looking ahead to the next Olympic Games, aside from his individual events, he's going to be absolutely key in trying to get us medals in relay events. And, we were just talking about Chad le Clos. The way that we looked at Chad le Clos sort of from 2010, 2012 onwards, Pieter Coetzee is now the guy. He's our guy. And we have to back him 100%. And we have to make sure that he's getting the funding and the support and that everything that he needs. Because I think looking ahead to the 2028 Olympics, it's Pieter Coetzee that's going to carry us. In the same way that we hope that Chad le Clos would, Pieter Coetzee is the next guy. And he proved that at the World Junior Championships, the World Senior Championships, the Commonwealth Games. The next step is the Olympics.
Lara van Niekerk in swimming, as well as Nathan Hendricks and Christian Sadie for the Paris swimming, together with Sinesipho Dlamini within athletics. We'll talk about that separately. But let's deal with Lara as well as Nathan and Christian. What do you make of their performances? They also added to a gold medal count.
Yeah, I think Nathan and Christian both, we were kind of banking on them going in, and they delivered exactly the way that we hoped they would. And that kind of experience you can't buy. So again, looking ahead, I think those are people that we can look towards. Lara van Niekerk was an incredibly talented junior swimmer. And she did amazing things at the last edition of the Commonwealth Games. And then she had multiple issues, you know, both in terms of injury and things outside the pool. Like you were saying earlier, Chad le Clos had similar problems. And, you know, I think it's very difficult to perform at your best when you're having all these things that are going on. And I was actually almost at the point where I was going to write Laura van Niekerk off. I didn't think that we were going to see much more of her. And for her to come out and win a gold in the 50 breaststroke is incredible. It really is. It shows that she's perhaps overcome some of those issues that she's dealing with. And again, looking ahead to the 2028 Olympics, it's an indication that we have another athlete there who has managed to shake off whatever problems that she's had, and maybe we've got some medals in the bank there from her as well.
Sinisipho Dambile, I mean, that sub 20-second gold in the 200 meters, absolutely sensational as far as I'm concerned. I mean, how significant is that achievement for SA Athletics?
Oh, it's incredible. In terms of track and field athletics at the moment, like kind of everything is geared towards sprinting. It's not that people are not investing in other disciplines. It's just that for some reason over the last 10 years, our sprinting has gotten better and better and better. And it's kind of wobbly at the moment. We have some very talented youngsters, and we have the likes of, say, Akani Simbine, who's kind of at the back end of his career. And we need guys who are stable enough and consistent enough to perform. And I think the one person that stood out in South African sprinting this year is Sinisipho Dambile. He's been absolutely incredible. He's won a couple of Diamond League races. He's gone under 19.8 twice now in the 200 meters, and he pulled it through. You know, like, I think that's what you want to see. You want to see an athlete who is capable of pulling it off on the big stage, and Dambile did that. He did that at the Commonwealth Games. Unfortunately, we didn't see him in the relay. I think we will at the next Olympics. I'm pretty sure that he'll be part of the team there. Wasn't in Glasgow, but in terms of what he did in his individual 200 meters, we couldn't have asked for more. We need guys like that who are able to stand on the big stage under pressure in a final, come through, get the gold medal. And we haven't seen a lot of that from our sprinters in recent years. So yeah, Dambile is the guy. And looking ahead to the next Olympics, I think he's another one we need to watch.
All right, Wesley Botton, if you have a bit of time for me after the break, I got a question here. Maybe let's just allow it to sink in, and we might answer it shortly.
Good evening, Rob. Good evening also to the listeners. I've got a question for your journalist there, Mr. Wesley. What happened to Matthew Sates, the young swimmer that I think he went to the Olympics in Tokyo 2021? And because I read a story a couple of weeks ago that he wants to represent Australia. I don't know if that is true. I don't know if Wesley has some background on that story in terms of what is going on with Matthew. Have you lost Matthew Sates, or was it just rumors that? Because I didn't see him in the current games. I don't know if I missed him in the Australian team. Thank you.
947.
Chatting to Wesley Botton, sports reporter with The Citizen, as a well-renowned friend of #MSW, joining us right here to talk everything to do with the Commonwealth Games. And as I'm looking at the lines buzzing, all the voice notes that are coming in, I did ask Wes to stay with us. Wesley, I appreciate your indulgence. That question that popped up just before the break regarding Matthew Sates, who is South African, who we know has represented South Africa before at the Olympic Games. Is it true about what's going to happen to him? Is he heading off to Australia?
Yeah, I think he is. And this opens a bigger question, I think, in terms of what's happening with South African sports. If we look at Olympic sports, I think it's becoming more and more of a problem, because Matthew Sates was a phenomenal young swimmer. As a teenager, he got a gold medal for South Africa in the 200-meter individual medley at the World Championships back in 2022 in Melbourne. And he actually got 2 medals at those championships. And then we never really heard much more from him. You know, he didn't come through. He didn't achieve much more, and he's now, as far as I'm aware, he is jumping ship. So he's going to be trying to get Australian citizenship, or has already, and he'll be representing Australia in the future. But we also have an incredible young sprinter from South Africa, Benji Richardson, on the track, who has now committed to compete for Ireland. And he's another youngster who got medals at the World Junior Championships. And, you know, as much as we haven't seen from Matthew Sates over the last few years, and Benji Richardson as well, like even at the moment, perhaps not producing his best form, I just think, you know, why are we not holding on to these people? Why would Matthew Sates want to go and swim for Australia? Why would Benji Richardson want to go and run for Ireland? And I think it's because they're just not getting enough support. So it's a very good question from your listener. Yes, Matthew Sates is going to try and compete for Australia, but I think as South Africa, we need to start asking these questions. Why are these people leaving, and why are we not doing enough to hold on to them?
Maybe we need to track down Matthew Sates. That'll be my next homework as far as trying to find out. And while we're on the break, one of the things I try to check, Wesley, you probably know this more than I do, with the recent update to the World Aquatics rules, that they only require a 1-year absence from representing a prior country to change your sporting citizenship. So in his case, he could slide straight into the Australian team.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, in athletics, it's a bit more strict. So I think Benji Richardson is going to have to wait like 3 years before he can compete for Ireland, which is an indication of how much he wanted to leave, right? If you're willing to wait 3 years before you represent another country. But yes, Matthew Sates could be competing for Australia as early as next season. And it would be kind of horrible for us to watch him competing in yellow kits at the next Olympics and maybe getting a medal. And I don't know if he will. Like, obviously, we can't tell the future, but we've got to hold on to these people. We really do. If someone's performing that well as a junior at senior level, exactly the same with Matthew Sates and Benji Richardson, why aren't we holding on to these people? Why are we not investing enough that they feel like they want to hold on to their South African roots? And we've seen this in other sports, right? We see cricket players competing for England who are actually South African, and they've jumped ship. And we need to, I don't know, Robert. I think that we just need to do more effort to hold on to these people.
That's why I'm saying that if we haven't learned from the past again, Wesley, where similar things have happened, you know, tennis players, like you rightfully say, rugby players have been going as far as playing for the likes of Japan and so on. What is it that we're doing wrong? Should we put it in the doorstep of Swimming SA? Should we directly approach the minister? Because at some point the ministry has got to intervene. You know, there's a SASCOC element to it. So there are many different questions that have to be asked. But for me, I would go directly to Matthew and just really find out what's going on deep down inside, because he is somebody that wants to achieve, has achieved, but is not getting the recognition.
Good evening, Rob, and good evening to Wes. Wes, do you perhaps know if SASCOC has got a talent pathway strategy or high-performance plan to support these athletes that did well at the Commonwealth Games and prepare them thoroughly and to ensure that they are not lost in the system as we prepare for the upcoming Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles? Just want to hear your views around that.
Well, Tebogo, thank you so much. Wes?
Yeah, they do. Probably not as extensive as we would like. They do have the Operation Excellence program at SASCOC, which provides funding for athletes. I've never really bought into the Operation Excellence program because I feel like they're basically funding the top tier, right? So once you've made it as an athlete, once you're already competing at the highest level, once you've got sponsors, that's when they start backing you. And I feel like the problem with the OPEX program that SASCOC has is that they should not be looking at the top-tier elite athletes that are already able to fund themselves. They should be looking at the second-tier, third-tier people. They should be looking at juniors and trying to provide opportunities and funding for people that don't have it. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would fund someone who's already made it to the top. You've got to fund the people, identify the talent, like your listener just said. Someone has performed well at the Commonwealth Games. Maybe get behind some of those youngsters. Maybe start giving them some support so that over the next couple of years you can give them whatever they need to get to the next Olympics and be able to compete against the best in the world. Our elite top athletes don't need it. They don't need the funding. They've got the sponsorship. They've got what they need. And I feel like it's just a weak sort of approach, right? Like it's almost a way of saying, okay, we've got this funding, and this is who we're going to give it to, rather than taking the time and the effort to understand that those people at the top don't need that support. The people coming through at the bottom are the ones who need the support. And if you speak to those athletes, those youngsters, like we're talking about Matthew Sates now, we're talking about Benji Richardson. That's why we're losing them. We're losing them because we're not helping them. We're giving the money that's available to the people who don't need it.
Sure. Wesley, I think you've sparked off something here. We'll definitely do our homework from our side and follow up on those stories, because as South Africans, when it gets to the top tier of a competition like the Olympic Games, we really want to relive our potential. Let's not let the souls of the likes of, Josiah Tugwane go to waste, where he sits back and says, where's the next generation of what I achieved? Or Penny Haynes to say, where's the next generation of what I've achieved? And I think it will only be wrong for us as observers, as journalists, as on-air individuals, to not be able to fight the fight on behalf of those that we know that if given a fair chance, they would fight for the flag. Wesley Botton, as always, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you, Robert. Keep well, mate.
Thank you. That's Citizen Sports reporter Wesley Botton.
Marawa Sports Worldwide on 947, Monday to Friday from 6 to 7 p.m.